Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael, and welcome to my carb legal LS3 wagon swap project. In today's video, we did that. As a reminder for those who have just joined us for this episode, please, so far we have done the wheels, tires, sway bars, coilover suspension, a new front steering rebuild kit. We've done brakes from Wilwood, and we rebuilt the rear end with an Eaton Detroit True Track limited slip differential. So we've gotten ready for the power. We've got the handling kind of dialed in a little bit, and now we just need to make room for our glorious new LS3 Connect and Cruise E-Rod engine, which we got courtesy of Guarantee Chevrolet in Santa Ana, California. So let's go ahead and dive into the removal process.
Apparently there's a really easy way to drain this first. You pull out one of these cooler lines up at the radiator, run the car, and it'll basically pump all the fluid out of the transmission into like a gallon jug or something, and I haven't done that. So I'm gonna have to do this the hard and messy way, so live and learn. So far so good, everything has been moving relatively smoothly. I guess this is the benefit of working on a California car. The exhaust came out in 5 minutes. And then to get all the bolts of the trans, I had to move the cross member and then kind of slide it back a little bit to get to these back bolts, but obviously not ideal. And we know that there's more fluid in the torque converter and in the trans cooler lines and stuff. But just in terms of draining the pan so that it's not leaking fluid while it's sitting around and when it's in transportation for hopefully the next owner. But by the way, this thing looks really nice inside. The transmission looks newer than the engine, I would say. There's some dirt that's come back from the oil leaks, but wow. Here's the pan. Fluid was nice and red. Feel some metallic flakes down in the magnet, but I think that's to be expected. And so now I think I'm gonna try to do the drive shaft here. All right, so 4 10mm bolts, pry bar to push that way, and the yoke is ready to come out. Super easy. Shocked, actually, shocked. Okay, here we go. Try not to drop this on my head. There we go. Hey, all right. Let's go ahead and put these guys back in so we don't lose them.
All right, update. And so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna head into the engine bay and just try to start disconnecting as much as possible to get down to, removing everything from the engine as much as I possibly can. So cue the time lapse.
Progress. Just got the starter out, which was my first time doing it. It's super simple, you guys. Holy smoke. And I've got a bunch of the wiring harness disconnected. So it turns out with the 92 Roadmasters, there's only one oxygen sensor and it goes under the driver's side. But that is the bottom of the engine for the wiring harness, so I can now take this upstairs. But yeah, this is such an interesting learning experience. Most of the harness out now. It's really fascinating. The harness comes in, the computer is over here, and the passenger footwell kind of tucked up right in down here. And then so the wiring comes in, splits off. You've got some transmission sensor stuff that go over this way and down. And then a whole bunch of it comes up here, connects to all the necessary things, then goes down and under the oil pan and back up there for a couple more sensors. All right, folks, day 2 of tearing down the engine bay. We've got to disconnect the fuel lines, which are right down there. We've got to disconnect the heater hoses, or heater core hoses, I should say. Transmission cooler lines on this side, oil cooler lines over on this side. Move the radiator and the air conditioning condenser, or is that the evaporator? I think that's a condenser. I don't know, somebody tell me. All right, a touch more progress, folks. Decided to go ahead and take the windshield wiper motor out of the way just because it was sitting out here, and hopefully we're gonna pull the engine forward before lifting up, but I just wanted to give a little extra room here, and that really helped getting these heater core hoses off. Getting the wiper motor out is pretty easy. You just gotta get access to this little compartment down here, and there's a couple little 7mm that connect the end of the motor. 3, I think these are 10s here, but so this is all out. Fuel lines are disconnected down there. That was super easy. Just got an OEM Tools kit
that is an actual quick disconnect that works. So I guess we'll turn our attention here to the trans and oil cooler connects so we can get the radiator out. Wish me luck! I'm here in my garage and it's an absolute disaster at the moment, which is completely embarrassing for me because I like to keep things neat. And what I'm gonna do tonight is I'm gonna see if I can put together the 2-ton Pittsburgh load leveler and engine hoist that I picked up from Harbor Freight. All right, folks, success, hooray! So, this was not that bad at all, actually. The directions are terrible and non-existent, but they did this amazing thing and they labeled each of the bolts with a number that corresponds to a chart. So it was very intuitive to figure it out, despite the fact that they didn't have any good instructions. But overall, it looks pretty heavy duty. It took about an hour or so to put together. And update success! Woohoo! I've made a giant mess that, oh god, it's went further than I thought. And I've got to get all these fluids to the recycling center. And then once I get that cleaned up, we'll have to make another mess by cleaning up everything in the engine bay. But here's the Buick Roadmaster's engine bay. Sorry that there's no time-lapse video of me doing the engine removal. It was a little bit unnerving, so I decided to go safety first, video second. But we did it. Big shout out to all the people who do this professionally. I'm sure I wasted a lot of time and broke a couple things unnecessary, but I'm just kind of trying to learn here, and I'm having an absolutely fantastic time. Oh, wow. I can't believe we got this far. This is amazing. So I'm gonna go put this down. And boom! There we have it. This is what the engine bay now looks like, super clean. The steering box is out, as well as the intermediary steering shaft. So the funny thing is I thought this was would be hard to get out while the engine was in, but it turns out it's actually just 3 bolts right here on the side of the frame. You'll need a Pitman arm puller to get this guy out. I rented mine from AutoZone, but it's really easy to take out. Just pops right out, take out the 3 bolts, and yeah, so far things are looking good. This is that steering kit we installed a few episodes ago. Unfortunately, my alignment shop ate up the tie rod sleeves there. That sucks. Oh well, let's get masking. Alright, update for you folks. But we've got everything covered up so that we can hit the frame rails over here, do the cross member over here, and the rattle canning went relatively quickly. I think I made a few mistakes. I got some on my springs over on this side. Those ones, okay. I think my bag kind of shifted here while I was going, so just gonna let this dry. Not a professional job, of course, but it looks 1,000 times better than kind of the mismatched red, black, rust, and bare metal that was revealed after we pressure washed after taking the engine out. Okay guys, it is the next day. The engine bay, I think at first glance, looks mostly stock, which was kind of my goal. You know, we protected the metal. We kept that red back there. We did wash it. It's a lot shinier than it was when the old engine came out. Hagen cameo. Hi, sweetie. What do you think? You gonna help? Next up on the to-do list while there's no engine in the car is to put a fuel system back in the car, or to replace one, I guess I should say. So I'm working off some instructions that I found on the GM Long Roof forum. We've got a couple 13s out in the back holding these stripes, and we got 15s on the front. Harness for the fuel pump comes in right here, at least on the 92s, here on the driver's side, right by the rear bumper. And then over here on the fuel filler side of thing, there's 3 clamps. And then once everything is disconnected, we'll be able to drop it and pull it out, All right, success, tank is out. I decided to take the fuel filler line with me. There's a ground here that straps on to the fuel filler neck, but that was super easy to get out. So the disconnects on the fuel line, squeezed them with my hand and the 2 fuel lines came off, and then there was just a little clamp on the evap line. This is all the crud that I just wire brushed off my rear diff. Good and bad news, got a little bit of hiccup here with the trailing arms, which I was kind of expecting. I finally found something that's harder to do than lower control arms. I was just talking to Frank over at South Bay 4x4 who did the rear end rebuild. And he was like, hey, you just use an air chisel, which I don't have. So not exactly sure what I'm gonna do yet. I might just have to put these on hold and maybe have a pro do it. Next up, you guys, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at our fuel pump and sending unit. This is supposed to be a direct drop-in kit for 94 to 96 B-bodies, Roadmasters, Impalas, and so forth. This is the high output version of the pump for them. The great news is that getting to the fuel pump assembly on these 92s is stupendously easy, particularly for us since we don't have any rust. These 6 10mm bolts, and you can lift the whole pump assembly out. That was not too hard at all. The only thing that kind of went a little sideways is that the sock had to be torn off. I couldn't get this loose, but I'm actually really glad that I was doing the fuel pump anyway for the project, because my sock was starting to break down, it looks like, you know, separate from the installation adventure today. Here's a cool thing. So it's not a direct plug and play, but Walbrew, with their installation kit, includes the adapter. Light hang up here. I thought that this plug, the new connector plug, was gonna kind of like sit here but still be able to connect to the other one. I wanna make sure that there's room for the plug to, you know, fully click into place. So I think I'm gonna just trim the inside of this square hole. Just a little bit of time with the Dremel. My apologies that it's not super pretty. The bottom hooked up, the clamp is below here. I kind of hid that. This is the cap that just kind of holds the pump in place. And what's really neat about it is that this one actually fits, I think, better than the one that was on. So this is what was in the car, but everything is ready to go. The hose ended up being the hardest part, so you kind of had to cut it to length, otherwise it'll kink. Everything is plugged in and it looks pretty OEM, so I'm gonna put the sock on. We're gonna go back in. Oh, the other thing to note is that the included O-ring in this kit did not fit this sealing area right around the edge of the tank. I don't know if you guys can see it, it's black on black, but fit. So I'm reusing the other one because I didn't see any cracks or kind of issues with it. But I will be look out for a replacement eventually. Fuel pump and housing are now back in securely. Hopefully everything is gonna fire right up there when we plug it in and send power to this baby, but I guess we'll find out soon. And then I wanna go ahead and talk you through the fuel line that we're gonna install. We're working with Holly that owns Earl's Performance Plumbing, and they really hooked us up with some amazing stuff, you guys. So the fuel line that we're using is Earl's Vaporguard fuel injection line. LS3's, FYI, needs 60 PSI, and this thing is rated to 225. And we're gonna be using 6 AN line fittings to make everything kind of nice and work out. So let me show you kind of how it's gonna go. In the OEM system, the sending line comes out the tank and comes up here to the OEM fuel filter. Basically like that, right? But that for 94 to 96s, they moved a fuel line over here to the driver's side, and aren't we lucky enough? This frame rail has the holes for a fuel filter. Got the fuel filter up into position, and here is our Earl's Vaporguard fuel injection hose line, 3/8 inch, rated to 225 PSI. Get that in there. Okay, all the way on there. We'll do a little clampity clamp action. It's nice and tight. But everything is completely mocked up. We got our 3/8 connector running all the way up to the engine bay with plenty of extra hose to connect to the LS3 directly. 5/16 is the return line. I did that first, so it's tucked up into the back and run over to here. And then here is the last bit to do. This is the fuel system right here. This is the 3/8 connector. This is our sending line. Comes all the way out. It's gonna be the closest line here. Goes into the 3/8 here on the fuel filter regulator. This is a Wix, not sponsored, but C5 regulator. Bolts right into place
on the driver's side frame rail. All right, and success. Another very easy minor victory. So I got this Borgson unit into place. This is the quick ratio steering box. Very easy, 3 bolts coming in through the fender liner, 1, 2, 3. And one last thing for this particular episode, you guys, we went ahead and installed a Dorman shaft that was made for the 1991, give or take, Jeep Cherokee. There's an article on bangshift.com about this mod. It is super, super easy. This end of the steering shaft will bolt right up to your OEM GM, or in this case, our universal Borgson. All you need to do to make this fit, take the bolt out, slide the shaft on this end. There's a little indentation in this part of the receiver. Then you put the bolt through. On this end, just need a little grinder wheel, and you can do the same thing. You can make a little channel for the bolt, or what some people do is they just kind of grind off the top section of it. And now we have no more rag joint. I've heard some things where people have said that this kind of makes the steering feeling a little bit harsh, so we'll experiment and see what happens. I've still got the OEM steering shaft that I can put in its place. And the other thing I did just quickly is that I went ahead and put the pitman arm on here. What's really neat about the Borgson, in their instructions, what they say to do is to make sure you're at center. So this unit goes side to side 3 full rotations. So you make sure you go the 3 rotations, you count that, then you go back 1.5. It lines up the splines here on the bottom so that it's at 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock. Then there are indentations here in the pitman arm that make that line up perfectly. So we know that right now this thing is centered, the steering shaft is centered, and the wheel inside the car is centered. And now the wheels themselves and tires are perfectly centered. The reason I did this while the engine was out of the car is that 1, there's a ton more room, and then 2, it's really, really hard to get this particular nut torqued. I think it's 35 or 36 foot-pounds. All the other ones we did earlier, and this one I kind of had to guess earlier in the video series because I could not get a full-size torque wrench up into here because there used to be a whole engine right here. So anyway,
there we have it, folks. We took the old engine out, we put the new fuel system in, we did a little painting, we did a little bit of prep. Thank you so much for watching if you've made it all the way to the end of the video. But go ahead and get ready, because in the next episode, we're bringing the wagon back to life with this.